Okay, without any further ado, I would like to bring on our first guest of the evening, Joe Banister, the first and so far only I think they know who you are. So far, the first and only IRS Criminal Investigation Division Special Agent ever to conduct, while serving as a special agent, an investigation into the allegations that the IRS illegally administers and enforces the federal income tax. He respectfully reported the results of his investigation to his IRS superiors, up to and including the IRS commissioner. However, rather than address the legitimate concerns raised by one of their own distinguished investigators, his superiors suspiciously refused to address the chilling evidence of IRS wrongdoing raised in his report, and instead, big surprise, encouraged him to resign his position. Banister eventually chose to resign from his position so that he could report his findings to the American public. In effect, Joseph Banister had to resign from his position in order to abide by his oath to support and defend the United States Constitution. So without further ado, Joseph Banister.
Thank you, Elle. All right, I got to be quick because you need to hear from Sheriff Mack. Okay, so first these little hearts. Has everybody got one? You didn't? Oh, because there's a lady from the IRS that's handing these out, and this stands for I Heart IRS. Make sure that you wear it. A little housekeeping. First, the Freedom Foreign hosts and hostesses. I don't know if that's politically correct. But like stewardess, don't use it, or you might lose it. But anyway, you guys are just you're so classy. You sent me like a thank you note last year, and they're just awesome. So wonderful, wonderful ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so now how many people, I always have to take this poll, how many people have seen America Freedom to Fascism? Very good. Pretty darn good, okay. Well, so you think it's a pretty good movie? Are you spreading it around to other people? Okay, good. Well, I just want to let you know that I was in the movie, got a little brief role there, but also attorney Peter Gibbons, who is also in the movie, is also with us. Peter, you have to take a little bow. All right, then those little Banister cards that are handed around there, the website on the back, truthattack.org, it's wrong. It's no longer valid. It's truth-attack.com. So I just want to let you know that. You might want to write it on the back if you're going to follow up on that. All right, then. The CSPOA, you're going to be hearing a little bit more about that from Sheriff Mack. It's an acronym, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, but you don't necessarily have to be or currently or previously serving peace officer or sheriff. You can support that organization, whether you're a member or not. So I really hope you'll understand, or you already do understand, how important it is to have, we're shooting for 3,000 or so sheriffs. We've still got a ways to go, but it's really, really important to get sheriffs to recognize their oath and who they actually serve. And that organization that you'll hear more about from Sheriff Mack is the one, and you can support it right here on these little cards, which will be on the front, right here in the front. So please support them. All right, so that's pretty much the housekeeping, and just going to introduce my very good friend Sheriff Mack. A couple of the fringe benefits of taking a stand that ends up becoming public. Wasn't my original plan, but naive Catholic boys kind of get into this kind of trouble from time to time. So it is what it is. But a couple of fringe benefits, you know, being able to meet people like yourselves who take the time to come to these events, I salute you. I absolutely salute you. And then the other wonderful fringe benefit is to meet people like Sheriff Richard Mack. People that even while I worked at the IRS, you know, I had the reputation in the office of being kind of the constitutional guy, like as if that was bad. Because I had these bumper stickers in my cubicle that said, you know, fear the government that fears your guns, and the experts agree gun control works with Castro and Stalin. And, this is at my cubicle at the IRS, so I wasn't afraid to speak up a little bit. But anyway, I remember hearing about Sheriff Mack because I was a Second Amendment supporter from way back. So I heard about this Sheriff Mack and what he was doing fighting the Clinton administration. And to one day be a friend of his, somebody that actually picks him up at the airport this morning and, you know, gets to be in his presence. I mean, it's really wonderful. So anyway, that's the second fringe benefit. So just quickly about Sheriff Mack. Author and speaker, he served in a wide variety of roles over the course of nearly 20-year career in law enforcement. Began his career in Provo, Utah. He ran for sheriff in Graham County, Arizona, and he was elected in 1988. Sheriff for 2 terms until 1997. Named elected official of the year by the Arizona-New Mexico Coalition of Counties in 1994. He received the Samuel Adams Leadership Award from the Local Sovereignty Coalition, and Gun Owners of America Defender of the Second Amendment Award. In 1994, Sheriff Mack and 6 other sheriffs from across the country sued the Clinton administration over unconstitutional gun control measures. Probably heard of it, it's called the Brady Bill. The Mack Prince case was what set Sheriff Mack on a path of nationwide renown, as their case went all the way to the Supreme Court, where they won a monumental decision for freedom. So fast forwarding to today, I mean, it's amazing how something that he was doing, and this is where something that Sheriff Mack and myself and Peter and all of you too, you know, there's something providential that goes on where you think, well, what am I doing this for? And what's this going to mean? And you have to wait, you know, 5, 10, 20 years before you find out. So what Sheriff Mack was fighting for was so monumental for, you know, gun control issues and trying to control county sheriffs. But he's going to tell you about how it even has even greater effects today with the increasing, you know, nastiness that Big Brother's inflicting on us. So pay close attention. And in that same vein, using the reasons that were brought up in Sheriff Mack's case, South Carolina is attempting to pass HB 3101, which nullifies Obamacare for South Carolina citizens and businesses. If the bill passes, South Carolina will be the first state to take this courageous and very appropriate stand against this most destructive and abusive and, yes, unconstitutional statute. Mack is the founder of CSPOA, that I mentioned earlier, Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, dedicated to helping public officials do their jobs while keeping their oaths of office and keeping their jobs too, right? Anyway, my good friend, Sheriff Mack.
Wow, you find out a lot about a guy when he introduces you, don't you? I tell you, it's always been my honor to be around Joe. I can't imagine the courage that it took to stand against the IRS. Some of you have to do it because they're after you, but he volunteered. Yeah, so totally amazing. A lot has happened since I was here last. How long ago was that? 3 years? Because I don't think the CSPOA existed when I was here last time. And I formed that 3 years ago. So it had to be right about 3.5 years ago that I was here last, and I really appreciate being back. I thank you so much. But I mean, absolutely worlds have happened since I was here last, and I'll try to get it all in before midnight. And in fact, speaking of which, so everybody knows, Al, how long do you want me to go? An hour? Okay, so we're going to end right about 9 o'clock. So if you have to go to the bathroom, I don't want to hear the flushing, okay? Okay, thanks. So that's ruder than standing in the back talking. I'm not kidding you, miracles have happened since I was here last. Miracles brought me here. Oh, and speaking, was it Jensen?
Yeah.
What was your first name?
Kevin.
Kevin. I was going to say Kevin. Anyway, I'm going to hand you one of the miracles right now. And you can read it over. It's just a one-page thing. And we're going to send this to every sheriff candidate in the country. If you would like to be the first one in California to hand this back to me signed, then that's up to you. That was a result of our most recent CSPOA conference that we held just January 24th, not even 3 weeks ago. And just another amazing miracle. These were the beautiful little CSPOA notebooks. The reason I'm showing you this, and the reason I'm showing it up here, is so that you'll memorize that. You cannot forget that. You know why you can't forget that? Because it's the, I don't want to say the only, but it's probably the most effective, boots on the ground, happening right now, don't have to wait for the next campaign or some other politician to make you some other empty promise. Solution right now going on. It's happening even as we speak. It is the solution that all of you have been fighting and praying for. And I'm going to tell you some things about that that are going to make that vividly true. And some of you are actually hoping and telling me, man, Sheriff Mack, can't you get us a sheriff that's doing this and this and this and saving us and stopping CPS from taking our kids? Or, you know, my husband was arrested for possession of a gun in San Diego or whatever, and now we actually have some of these things happening. Do you know that we have one of our good sheriffs, just an absolute miracle, in Elkhart County, Indiana, Sheriff Brad Rogers, threatened to arrest the FDA. Now don't cheer yet. I know that sounds wonderful. So, okay then.
See how quick on the draw he is?
Okay, is that going to work? Okay, I got it on. It's showing red.
That's right.
Okay, good. All right then. But
actually, if you put it on your lapel near the heart, it's better, because when the jacket rubs up against it, it'll make a noise. Yeah, that'd be good.
all right. Okay, Sheriff Brad Rogers. He invited me out to teach my constitutional class for peace officers about 4 years ago to Indiana. He invited a lot of other agencies and other sheriffs, and we had about 60 people in his training facility. And really a great guy. Said that he planned to keep his oath of office as sheriff of Elkhart County. And then I find out that he actually put some of it into effect, that he's actually doing it. And it turns out that David Hostetler, an Amish farmer, is being harassed by the FDA. Now, this is one of our biggest concerns, is that the federal government believes that they can establish bureaucracies that don't have to follow the Constitution. That their bureaucratic policies and procedures and regulations somehow supersede the Bill of Rights. That they don't have to go by the rules. And we have federal courts, even the U.S. Supreme Court, that have said, yes, that's okay. And we have said, and we're still saying, and the CSPOA is saying, no, you can't. And we don't care if the Supreme Court has said so. The Supreme Court doesn't get to destroy your Constitution, and the rest of us sit back and go, darn, why did they do that? There's nothing we can do now, because the Supreme Court is the ultimate monarchy of America, and when they speak, you bow down and kiss their ring. Wrong. Wrong is right. And so we are teaching sheriffs that we don't do that. Okay, that the Constitution is first. Why is the Constitution first? Is because it's based on God's law in protecting God-given rights, and so you have to know and understand that that comes first. Okay, men don't come first because they're stupid. Okay, that's why. So here's David Hostetler, an Amish farmer, being harassed by the FDA. They want to know why he thinks this guy, I mean, they ought to put all of them in jail. Because they think that they can just milk their cows and drink it. And some of them even think that they can share that product with others. Whoa. I know. They have a few acres of land, they grow grass, they put the cows on it, let the cows eat the grass, bring the cows in, milk them, and share those products. Raw milk and cheese with family and friends and neighbors. I'm one of them. I love that, you know, and I've gone all over the country now, since I was here, drinking raw milk with these people. Vernon Hershberger in Madison, Wisconsin asked me to come out because he knew a little bit about me and he knew this would just be a Sheriff Mack thing to do. Drink raw milk on the state capitol steps where they made it illegal. So I did, and now I have drunk raw milk in Arizona, in Utah, in Wisconsin, in Maryland, and a couple other places. Oh, Kentucky. I spoke at the Kentucky Sheriff's Association at their banquet, and there's 116 sheriffs there, and the Louisville sheriff, where we're having this, sitting right next to me, and I drank raw milk right in front of all these sheriffs and right next to this guy. I was a little bit nervous because I don't trust all these cops in this country now. So I told them, and I had a local Amish farmer bring me some of this milk, and I'm drinking it in front of these guys. All 116 sheriffs of Kentucky. I'm drinking illegal. I feel like I'm up there drinking cocaine or something, you know. It's illegal milk. You know, get that guy, stop that guy before he drinks it, you know. I thought they're going to tackle me and handcuff me, you know. Haul this guy off, he thinks he's going to drink raw milk in front of us, you know. And so I did. I actually got up there and drank raw milk, illegal milk. And I told them what I was doing. I said, you guys are actually going to enforce stupid laws? The enforcement of stupid laws is the essence of tyranny. Yeah. And that's what the point I was trying to make. And so, you know, what's funny is I've been, you know, over a half dozen places drinking raw milk. And the irony of that is, I hate milk. You know, I really do. I hate milk. All my life, I've never drank milk. I hate it. And but you know, I don't know if it was psychosomatic or what, but raw milk tastes better than store-bought milk. It goes down a lot smoother. And maybe it's just because it's freedom milk. It just tastes like freedom milk. It tastes better. I can drink raw milk. Yeah, but it has to be cold. It has to be cold. You know, so I told Vernon Hershberger when I went to Madison, I said, you better make sure that that milk's cold, because I'm not going to drink that and start gagging or something. Warm milk, you know. So Vernon Hershberger actually had his farm in Wisconsin raided by a SWAT team in front of his children, and because he didn't have permits and he wasn't pasteurizing his milk. And then David Hostetler was getting the harassment treatment from the FDA. And it was actually the state that went after Vernon Hershberger, but the FDA, the federal government's going after David Hostetler in Indiana. And so of course he's Amish and he's totally passive and submissive and lets the FDA come in. He passes all their spot inspections with no probable cause or warrants or anything else, or due process, nothing. He just lets them in. They said that they're coming in and he let them. And then they go back and do it again. And then they go back and do it again. And then they take some of his milk and take it off to a lab and everything's fine. He passes everything flying colors. So the FDA just doesn't like that. He's passing everything. And so of course they take him before a grand jury in Detroit. And they send him a subpoena and drop it off in person. Said he had to go to Detroit. How's he going to get there? Yeah, horse and buggy. And so now he's had it and he doesn't know where to go, so he calls Sheriff Rogers. And Sheriff Rogers shows up at his farm, and Sheriff Rogers isn't doing this for political reasons because the Amish don't vote. Most of them don't vote, and this one didn't. And so he told him what went wrong, and he says, I've cooperated, but he says, this has gone too far. I've had it, and I want to be protected from these criminals. And so Sheriff Rogers told him that he was going to do that. And so Sheriff Rogers notifies the FDA that if they come back in his county again, without due process, without duly signed warrants, without probable cause, that he will arrest him for trespassing. So, those of you who know the federal government, like we do, and Joe does, that didn't sit well. They're not just sitting back and go, oh, fine, Sheriff, sorry, you know. No, they have these big highfalutin attorneys, and they write back to Sheriff Rogers and said, if you interfere with what we're doing, you will be arrested for felony interference. Felonious interference. Yeah. Doesn't that sound right, Pete? That's felonious. It's going to be felonious, you know. And so, so Sheriff Rogers calls me, tells me all about it. And he says, I'm not intimidated, but he says, I thought you ought to know, and if you'd like, you can help me prepare a response. I said, oh, wow, yeah, that would be fun. So Sheriff Rogers and I work out a response, and we send it off, and 3 days later, a miracle happens. David Hostetler gets a certified letter that tells him that everything has been dropped and the FDA hasn't been back in over 2 years. Now, this is exactly what we teach, that the Constitution comes first. And it's not just for sheriffs, because every peace officer in this country takes the same oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. We want every patrol officer to recognize the importance of putting the Constitution first, putting freedom first. And I just met yesterday, I was in Las Vegas at the Western States Sheriff's Association. I met with about 45 sheriffs. And I asked all the sheriffs there, if you had the chance to stand for liberty, would you do it? And I told them about a man that I met last Saturday, John Porak, retired military. Probably will be dead by the time I get home from this trip. He asked me to come over to his house in Glendale, Arizona, so that he could tell me goodbye. Thanked me for the work that I'd been doing, and shook my hand and said, please tell the sheriffs, every chance you get, that they can save our country, that they can save America, that they can keep people from being abused by the IRS and by the FDA and the EPA and on and on and on. And I knew what he meant. But he's absolutely correct. He's done research, and he had piles of it there in front of me. And he'd come to the same conclusion, that the sheriff is the ultimate authority in his county. And we even talked about that. And we have people, of course, that have rejected that notion, that they're not, because the FBI is the ultimate authority in the country. Because they have national jurisdiction. It goes from Honolulu to Bangor, Maine. And of course they can go anywhere they want because the United States is their jurisdiction. And then I had a question to some of those people that have said that. Before the FBI was formed in 1935, who had the authority?
Yeah.
Who had the ultimate authority in every county in this country before the FBI came along? Would it be the elected sheriff who superseded our country? The first sheriff was 1650 in Delaware, the first state. So was there agreement when the FBI came about and the sheriffs acquiesced and turned over some of their authority to the FBI? Is there a contract? Was there an intergovernmental agreement? No, there was not. You know, they've come in and they've pushed their weight around because, you know, we're federal, you know, and they've seen some movies, probably, you know, like The Fugitive. Want to start, you know, pushing their, you know, and they probably watched TV back in the 60s and saw, you know, The Untouchables and all that, thought they were big stuff, you know. And so, no, my dear friends, the reason we know that the FBI doesn't have the authority is because they're appointed bureaucrats from Washington, D.C., and that bestows almost nothing. But what does bestow authority is this group called We the People. That's what bestows our authority. And the sheriff is the only elected law enforcement officer in the country. And he reports only to the power source, you. And he doesn't report to another bureaucrat, and he's not an appointed bureaucrat like a chief of police. And I don't want to demean chiefs of police, and I love these chiefs who come up to me and tell me, you're absolutely correct. The sheriff in my county is the ultimate authority. I love these guys, you know, because they recognize the truth about this. And they're willing to work with the sheriff, and the sheriff's willing to work with them. Fine, and I like that. That's fine, great. When it comes down to deciding who the Clio is, we the people decide that in every county. And that's the sheriff. And we're waking up a lot of people with our message because we've forgotten this. And so many of us were looking for some solutions to the tyranny going on. Some people rose up and formed the Tea Parties as a result of this. Some others have formed PANDA from some 20-year-old kid. Some others have joined Gun Owners of America or the NRA or other groups, and some other are getting behind Joe Banister and finding out what he did and just being amazed by that miracle. And then they're finding out that there's a Sheriff Palmer in Oregon that's standing up to the Forest Service and protecting people there, and he's been doing that and fighting them for 10 years. And I'm going to show you some other sheriffs here. But you know, actually, we have a sheriff in Delaware that stood against Beau Biden, the Attorney General, son of Vice President Biden, fighting him all the way to court. And he got no help from anybody except from us. And the only place we get our help is from you. We're not funded. I don't have money. We don't have any money. Whatever money we have comes from your membership or your donations. And I'm going to ask you right now, or the guy that bought the hat, he's wearing our CSPOA hat right here. Do you want us to keep going with what we're doing? Yeah. Okay. Then come over to this table afterwards and get a membership form and become a member and leave a donation here tonight. And make sure that we're able to help the next guy, because right now we got another one that we're helping. And we just finished with Sheriff Finch. Did you hear about him? Yes. Well, want to hear about another miracle? Yeah. Liberty County, Florida. Yes. This is, when I told you about this being an answer to our prayers that we've been praying for, that somebody would do this, that would absolutely stand and nullify someone who'd been arrested for mere possession of a gun, had committed no crime, But you see these state laws that say you have to have a permit. This guy didn't have one when he was stopped by a deputy that worked for Sheriff Finch. And the only way that a crime was committed was because this borderline probable cause traffic stop, the guy pulls the guy out of the car and finds that he has a gun in his pocket. Oh, he doesn't have a permit. Take him to jail. He's going to have a felony on his record now. So Sheriff Finch finds out about it, goes down to the jail, and does his own little investigation, talks to the suspect inside the holding cell, and he goes, "You don't have any criminal record?" "No, I've never committed a crime, Sheriff." "And you're in my jail?" "Yeah." So the sheriff told him to go home, told him that he's not being arrested, nullified the arrest, tore up the paperwork, got rid of it, and said, "No arrest, didn't happen, not gonna happen, not on my watch. Go home, it's over." Okay? So, it's not over. The deputy didn't like that. So he tattletells to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. So the sheriff just came in and nullified the arrest of this guy. And I did my job. I'm a good cop. And so they do an investigation, and they come in literally 2 months later. And this sheriff had only been sheriff for 2 months when this thing happened. March 8th, he took office January 1st last year. He's been in office 2 months, and then they come in and do their investigation, and so 2 months after that, they come in and pull a search warrant late at night and arrest Sheriff Finch and book him into his own jail. Yeah. And we find out about it, and we go down to Florida, and we kind of check out all this whole thing, and lo and behold, we side with Sheriff Finch. And we tell Sheriff Finch the same thing. There's been people all over the country praying that you would do what you did in preservation of the Second Amendment. Sheriff Finch didn't have any agenda, wasn't a member of the CSPOA. He is now. One of our stalwart members, as a matter of fact. Now he's kind of going on the lecture circuit with us. And he was at our conference on January 24th and spoke and was fantastic. And you know, we do this. We've had 4 national conventions, and we named a Sheriff of the Year. Sheriff Palmer from Oregon was our first one. And then Sheriff, David A. Clark Jr. from Milwaukee was the one last year. And he got the award in Missouri when we had our conference there last June. And along with a tornado that hit right next to us, it kind of interrupted our award ceremony. So yeah, it was just an amazing miracle again. Just miracles after miracles on this whole thing. And then Sheriff Nick Finch was the 2014 CSPOA Constitutional Sheriff of the Year. And he just accepted that 3 weeks ago in Vegas with his lovely wife, Angela. And so you see, this is all coming together. You see, he believed in this even though he wasn't a member. He believed in the oath of office. He believed in the Second Amendment, and he put it into action. And this is why I'm telling you, this is already happening. And we're going to spread this just as fast. We're going to make it bigger and better and faster. And everybody can become a member. Citizens can be a member. We charge you $10 more than public officials. So it's $35 for you. Do you know it's $35 for a 1-year membership? 1 year, $35. Do you know what that is? It's not even $3 a month. So if you can't afford that, come over here and borrow it from one of these attorneys. But don't leave here tonight without becoming a member. And if you have to do it and sign up online, then do not ever forget the web address. CSPOA.org. Okay? Anybody ever says CSPOA and they say it the wrong way, then you should be able to correct them. Because you're not going to forget that. I know it's kind of a long acronym, but we had to add peace officers to it because we didn't want to just do the CSA, Constitutional Sheriff's Association. No. We want all peace officers part of this freedom movement. You want them part of this freedom movement, okay? So just get this form, become a member. And people ask us all the time, well, what can we do? I'm not a sheriff, I'm not a cop. You know what? They work for you. You need to be part of this. It can't work without you, okay? So, yeah. Was that?
Logical?
Yeah, it's logical. It flows. It's like this. So, Sheriff Finch didn't have a happy landing on this at all. He was arrested, charged with a felony, and released. You know, he was booked into his own jail, but he was released, and he had a bunch of backstabbers in his own office now testifying against him. Oh yeah, and so we go out to Florida and do a big fundraiser for him, and we raised about $40,000 for him. But you know, his legal bills were about $150,000, and so we're still helping him with that too. But now we've got more, and we at our conference on January 24th, we said, for the sheriffs and everybody across the country, we want you to know, if you do these sort of things, we will be here for you. We will have a legal defense team ready for you. We will fund them, whatever we have to do. So we had Gun Owners of America offer their attorneys. We had Institute on the Constitution. We had Cruz Hall, who you really need to have here, by the way, if you haven't already. Michael Peruka and other, Larry B. Kraft and other attorneys. We'll probably need to add you to the list. And we have people and attorneys that are ready to defend sheriffs so that they don't have to be timid anymore about putting themselves on the line. And the more we increase this, the bolder they're going to be. If they know that people are behind them all across the country. I want to be able to tell them that. We have people even in California that are ready to go to bat for you. Yeah. So, I know, and I'm still amazed that people say, Sheriff Mack, why do you go to California so much? I said, actually, believe it or not, there's people who believe in the Constitution out in California still. Come see it. So, to make a long story short on Sheriff Finch, is they offered him a plea bargain, of course. What was the plea bargain? If you'll just leave office, we'll drop all the charges. Do you think they want some constitutional nut staying in office? Nullifying arrests and making their laws look stupid? You don't need his help to look stupid. I'll tell you. Do that on their own. But anyway, he told them to pound sand, and that he'd been in the military and he knew how to fight, and he's ready to fight. And so, man, they're making it really tough for him because the governor comes in and suspends him from office and removes him from office without pay. How's he going to pay for his lawyers? So all of a sudden, he's unemployed, no money. And he still tells them to pound sand. He's not going to take their deal. So we said, we got to raise money for his family and for his defense. And we did. And so, but like I say, it wasn't nearly enough, and we just kept that going on after that. And I met his family, and I was so impressed. And we stayed and went to church with him on Sunday after the fundraiser on Saturday, and it was an amazing experience, and we had a great time. And so, 3 days before Halloween, he went to trial. And it's in his county where he's from, and I thought they would remove it. Venue change for sure, but they didn't. The state didn't ask for one. So his constituents are going to be on the jury. And that's what happened. And for some reason, Florida's only six juries, for 6 people jury. And I thought it would be 12, but anyway, it was 6. And the trial was an absolute farce. I'm serious. I've been to lots of trials. This is the biggest farce kangaroo court I've ever seen in my life. The judge didn't know rules of evidence, didn't know the hearsay rule, didn't know any of that, and he's a retired judge, came back for this, their special appointment, and he was absolutely a jackass, and he allowed all the badgering of the witnesses. So finally, at the end of the trial, Sheriff Finch took the stand in his own behalf. And you want to know what was on trial now? the oath of office, the Constitution, the pledge we take to defend and preserve the Constitution. And the prosecutor is just badgering the sheriff. You think you're above the law? The state of Florida can't pass laws? And he's just taking this and taking this and taking this. And I've said, man, this judge is letting this prosecutor get away with murder here. And finally, Sheriff Finch just boldly and calmly said, well, Mr. Campbell, the Constitution has to count for something. That's why I did what I did. I took an oath, and I tried to keep it as best I could. And so I felt good about his testimony. It was fantastic, but I didn't feel like we were going to win. And I left before the jury came back. As soon as the trial, I had to get to another meeting, and I got on a plane and left. And I'm on the plane, and you can get on the internet on the planes now. I really like that. And I said, as soon as you get the verdict, send me an email. And about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm in the middle of the country, above Kansas or somewhere, on my way back to Arizona, and not guilty. Not guilty. I almost started jumping up and down and yelling, and I remembered I'm on a plane. Marshall will arrest me. But seriously, I had tears rolling down my eyes. I'm sure nobody really saw them, but I did. And I was so grateful for the miracle, because we lost in Delaware with Sheriff Christopher battling against Bo Biden there to preserve the office of sheriff. They're trying to remove the sheriff there and just make him a process server, which is a constable. They already have constables there. But they're saying the sheriff doesn't have authority to make arrests. And yeah, and so they've tried to remove him every way they can. They're trying to remove the authority of sheriffs in this country. Why is that? We all know why. And so Sheriff Finch won, and it was huge. And the governor, 15 minutes later, reinstated him as sheriff, which we don't believe he had the authority to do either way. But anyway, he was back in office, and he's back in office now, and he's doing a lot of good work, and he's helping us, and he's given the message, and he has said the same thing that Joe said a little while ago. He's telling everybody to join the CSPOA. This is boots on the ground, preserving our God-given rights and preserving the United States Constitution. This is what we're about, this is what we're doing, and we can't do it without you. So the amount of effort that you put into this will be basically what we will be doing. It's really your organization, and when you donate to this group, you're donating to you. You're donating to the freedom that you've been fighting and praying for how many years now? The one guy I heard, since 1988. That's the year I first ran for sheriff. And yeah, I was really young when I took on the Clintons. And Joe said one word that I think was really key about that. I was just young and naive. That naivete left pretty quickly by the time I got to the U.S. Supreme Court. But it was an absolute miracle. That was a miracle. And then the work that's brought us together now is another miracle. And there's more and more. And I'm going to tell you about this document that I just gave Kevin. That's a miracle. And so we had this conference, and I was basically done with this, because it just was frustrating me to be in charge of this group and to be the founder of this organization, and we're not doing enough, and still people are losing their land and losing their children and calling us asking for help, and we don't have any way to help them, and we're just trying to do everything we can for everybody all across America. Can't you talk to my sheriff, please, Sheriff Mack? They're taking my home, they're taking my children, please come and talk to my sheriff, And I just said, okay, that's it. Let's have another conference. We weren't even scheduled to have another conference until this September. And so I said, let's have a conference, and let's just get 75 sheriffs of the top sheriffs in the country, and let's say, are we going to continue on with this or not? And so in the afternoon, we had a workshop session. I said, at our first one, we started a document. And so I said, let's finish the document. And it's a notice to the federal government. And at first we called it the Declaration. But that kind had already been used once. So we use the word resolution. And again, it's not legislation. It's a resolution. It's a policy that we're all supporting. And so I prayed and prayed and prayed before we got to this that the Lord would raise somebody up to take over the meeting, because I didn't want it to be me. I sat in the audience in the afternoon, and Sheriff Rogers was the MC in the morning. And I said, Sheriff, you can still take the reins this afternoon, but somebody else has got to stand up and take charge of this meeting, and they don't even know who they are. And then Sheriff Joey Kyle from Missouri did it, all on his own. And we were hashing back and forth what to do with this resolution, because we're going to get people to sign it, as thousands and thousands of sheriffs and citizens and peace officers and county commissioners, and even got the only Republican state senator in Hawaii, Sam Sloan, to sign it. And anybody in public office at all, even if you're a precinct chair, you can sign this. And we're not really going after citizens, because I know we could get a bunch of those, but we're not going to deny a citizen if you want to sign it. But we're trying to get every candidate running for sheriff this year to sign it. You'll either say yes or no, and we're going to make that public. Okay? We're going to separate the men from the boys on this issue, and that's exactly why we wanted to have this. So the reason in fact, I told my staff and my wife, I said, the reason we're going to have this meeting is because I'm going to decide whether I'm going to keep going with the CSPOA. I've dedicated my life to it. My wife and I both spend full time on this, and we work it right out of our home together. And it's been so amazing. But I said, you know what? If the sheriffs don't want to do this, and if the people don't want to do this, I'm not going to do it anymore. Okay? And the meeting totally invigorated me, totally inspired me, totally exceeded my expectations, and I said, we're in. We're still in. We're going to do this. It's working. Why would I ever think about not going? And so in the afternoon session, we're just doing this workshop to finish this document. And now there's no hate or bickering, anything like that. Like, oh, you stupid, we can't do that. There was a little bit of hesitancy in the room. And some were going, that's too much to do in an afternoon. Let's table it. We'll form a committee and we'll get it done in 3 months. 3 months. And Sheriff Kyle gets up and he goes, look, okay, the rest of you, I want you out of the room. I want 10 people to stay in here. Who wants to volunteer to be on the committee? Okay, so then Sheriff Matlack from Oregon was saying how, no, this is too strong. We're not going to get any support. The wording's too strong. And I said, okay, you need to be on the committee, and you can tell the committee that. He goes, no, I'm not going to be on any committee. No. So Sheriff Matlack was on the committee. I don't know what changed his mind, but he got on the committee, and Sheriff Edmonds from Utah, who had written the letter from the Utah Sheriff's Association to Biden and Obama that the sheriffs of Utah would not tolerate any more gun control or tolerate them coming in, confiscating guns, or making law-abiding citizens criminals. So Sheriff Edmonds, who had written that, and 28 of the 29 sheriffs of Utah signed that letter and sent it on to Vice President Biden. Yeah, so I'm telling you, there's so many miracles about all of this. So Sheriff Edmonds was now on that committee. Sheriff Noel was on that committee from Beaver County, Utah. And they got their 10 guys. The rest of us left the room. In fact, some of us were in the back talking. And they told us to shut up and get out of the room because they had work to do. They came back after about an hour and 10 minutes. They showed us this document. We looked it over, and there was still some hesitancy about the wording. And Sheriff Kyle's now up at the front of the room, leading this whole thing, doesn't realize what he had done in taking over, just as I had prayed that somebody would. Great man. Oh, and what's his county? Christian County, Missouri. Yeah, Christian County, Missouri. And so things started to get a little bit argumentative. Nobody was walking out or anything like that or calling anybody names. No. And so somebody, one of the sheriffs, and I don't remember who, said, why don't we take a moment and ask the Lord's help? Yeah. So we said a prayer, and it calmed everybody down, and focus and the Spirit of the Lord came in that meeting, and the Spirit of freedom overwhelmed everybody. And we finished this document, and then we had one final vote about keeping the wording as it is. And I'll read you the wording. And they said, no, that's too strong. And one of them is number 3, that we would not tolerate anymore audits or searches of citizens' personal affairs or finances. And then number 8, the last one, said arrest of citizens or seizure of persons or property without first notifying and obtaining express consent from the local sheriff. Yeah. Okay. And then the last, before they sign, before anybody signs, there's 2 sentences. There is no greater obligation or responsibility of any government official than to protect the rights of the people. Thus, any conduct contrary to the United States Constitution, Declaration of Independence, or the Bill of Rights will be dealt with as criminal activity. So, you can see there was some strong language. And there were some sheriffs, one particularly from Idaho, he said that's too strong. And we asked everyone that had a problem with it, is it too strong for you, or do you think it's too strong for somebody else? He said it's too strong for somebody else, it's not too strong for me. So we took a vote, and it was a stand-up vote. And 3-1, we voted to leave the strong language. Everybody else said fine, we'll support it. And they all signed it, and we went on to our banquet. And that took 5 hours. And it was the most amazing 5 hours I've ever been a part of. And I'm going to tell you, in my lifetime, and I'm 61, born in 1952, in my lifetime, I've never been part of such a powerful, more powerful document or feeling in the room than I did feel at the Tuscany Hotel in Las Vegas on January 24th that day. The Lord was asked to be a part of it. You could tell that He touched the hearts of everybody there, and that document is the result. We're going to push this. We ask you to push it all across the country. Ask every public official you know to sign it and then get it back to me. And we'll put it on our list, and then we'll have it ready to go. But like I say, there's about 1,500 sheriff's offices up for grabs this year. They're already in the middle of their races. Another miracle was I was asked to be the moderator for the sheriff debate in Las Vegas in Clark County just 10 days ago. And so I'm the one leading the charge there, so all my questions, of course, are how are you going to keep your oath, and how are you going to enforce the laws of the Constitution and all that. So it's just one miracle after another. And I guess that's the title of my talk here, is just the miracles that are happening. If I don't have enough copies for everybody, but you can pull it off the website. Now, be careful when you go to the website, CSPOA.org. It's right up at the top, but it doesn't knock you out. It says 2014 resolution. So don't scroll down. It'll be right on the front page up at the top. There's several titles of different theme categories you can go to. That one will be right there at the top of the page. 2014 resolution. Okay? And then we're going to keep going here. All right. Now, Martin Luther King said there's 2 types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. one has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. And the first law that you must obey is your oath of office. And the oath of office, even in California, says that you solemnly swear and affirm that you will uphold and defend the United States Constitution. That's first. And then the California Constitution. And the California Constitution isn't that bad. But it's been bastardized just like the rest of the constitutions have, and the oath of office has been not just bastardized, but absolutely destroyed. And through pragmatism and the way we enforce laws. And so Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution is where it requires the oath of office and allegiance to the Constitution by every public official. Okay? It's required by the supreme law of the land. So the first thing you have to know and understand that's inherent with the oath of office is that you have to know and understand the Constitution. You can't swear an oath to uphold and defend something that you've never read and that you don't understand the intent of the Founding Fathers. Do you know that your view of the Second Amendment will change immensely when you find out what they meant when they wrote the Second Amendment and why they put it in there? And why they even developed the Bill of Rights to begin with. They didn't have a Bill of Rights. The Constitution was signed, and the Bill of Rights didn't happen for over 2 years later. Because some of the founders were saying the Constitution didn't go far enough. And that there must be, so that we can always protect certain God-given rights, there must be a Declaration of Rights that any idiot in Washington could turn to and say, oh, whoops, we can't do that one. That's against the Declaration of Rights, called the Bill of Rights. And they did. They called it, many of them called it the Declaration of Rights. These are the ones that all politicians now and throughout the rest of the history of America and throughout our future would never be able to mistake that they can take no action regarding these principles. Congress shall make no law. That's in the first. That those 5 principles can have no, they're in the First Amendment, can have no laws made against them. They don't even get that. So they create an IRS and they can come in and make all the laws that they want to about that diminishes and destroys the First Amendment. And then they came up with the second. And it's the only one where it says this one shall not be infringed. And it's the most infringed of all of them. How does that happen? Because we have liars and criminals in government. And boy, some of them are smooth talkers, and they'll actually convince you that it says just the opposite. No, that's the one we're supposed to make constant laws about, over and over, so that we can restrict the law-abiding citizen from keeping and bearing arms. I've always wondered why politicians fear the law-abiding, owning guns. Yeah. So let's keep moving here. There's so much we have to go over. State nullification. Did I make that up? I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't make any of this up that you'll see in here. None of it. I'm just a messenger. And of course, Madison and Jefferson spoke about nullification. They even argued that the states should refuse to enforce laws which they deemed unconstitutional. Does that mean you wait for the Supreme Court to tell you what that? You know what? When I went to the Supreme Court, it cost $400,000, and it took 3.5 years, and that's fast to get to the Supreme Court and get a decision. 3.5 years. Is that justice? Is that how we get justice? If the IRS is destroying your life and family and ruining everything you have, and spent 22 years to attack you, like I know some people in Utah that the place where I get my books, that man was harassed and harangued by the IRS for 22 years, where I get my books printed. And nobody came to his aid and helped him. No one. 22 years. Finally, he walked away from it all, and the IRS took everything he worked for 45 years. They took it all. Glad to do it. They were. Not apologetic, they were glad to. After 5 years, he filed a complaint on the IRS agent going after him. 3 weeks later, his office was raided by a SWAT team from the IRS, and he was arrested, taken into custody. He filed a legal complaint. Can't do that either, boy, those IRS. So they're not going to do it. So the way we get justice is we have local people who live and work with us that know and understand this. You know? Isn't that what all 3 branches of government promise to do? We promise that we'll follow the Constitution. Because one branch doesn't put any responsibility on you to go along. Quite the contrary. It's when the sheriff has to stand. The other 2 branches think that I'm their puppet and that I'm just going to go along. Is it okay for a sheriff to tell a judge no? Is it okay for a sheriff to tell the governor no, or the legislature? Absolutely it is. He promised he would. In solemn oath. Madison used a word in his talk and his writing about nullification. He used the word interpose. And that is really where we're at. We actually didn't give Sheriff Rogers, remember the guy from Indiana? We didn't give him Sheriff of the Year. We gave him the Interposer of the Decade award. The CSPOA Interposer of the Year. And he says, hey, you know what? Man, they haven't been back. I was hoping to get another award. But they're not bothering us anymore. Yeah. Okay, these are the 2 sheriffs that ended up on the Supreme Court on my case. And I say my case. I was the first sheriff to file this lawsuit, and then I was so overwhelmingly happy that Sheriff Prince joined the case from Montana, and then 5 other sheriffs from across the state did also. You're talking about 7 sheriffs out of 3,087. 7. I don't even, what's the percentage of that? Yeah, about 0.00002%. So, and I show that so that you know that I'm showing you now a few things that are results from that case. And I know some of you know this, and some of it is in this book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. And if you don't have this, don't leave the room tonight without it. This is absolutely amazing. And probably the most valuable tool you can take with you tonight is this one, The Victory for State Sovereignty. This is a highlighted version of the case, of the ruling. Okay? The United States Supreme Court. Would you like to show some of these things to maybe a public official, a city councilman or something that believes that the federal government is our boss? Because this case emphatically says the federal government is not our boss. And I'll show you some quotes where that's made very clear. So Judge John Roll, when I was here last time, he was still alive. But he was killed, murdered at the scene where Congresswoman Giffords was attempted assassination on Congresswoman Giffords. He was one of the other 6 where the media talked, oh, and 6 other people were killed. Congresswoman Giffords was wounded, and 6 other people. A federal district judge, the head judge of that district in Tucson, is assassinated, taking a bullet for somebody else, interposing, his last time to interpose for someone else. He interposed for me numerous times. I'm not kidding you. He saved me in so many ways. Judge Roll. In his decision, he said, in one sentence, reviews the principle as to why I filed the lawsuit against the Clinton administration. Mack is thus forced to choose between keeping his oath. Have you ever heard a judge talk about the oath of office? He did. Or obeying the act, obeying the law, subjecting himself to possible sanctions. He was incensed that the federal government threatened to arrest us if we failed to comply. They didn't offer any money this time. Amazing. No money. A threat of arrest if we failed to comply. And I think they tossed the gauntlet out as a little test. Let's see how many sheriffs actually go along with us when we actually threaten to arrest them and offer them no money. Many did. Many. Okay. And then I wanted to show you this. This comes from the ruling. Do you recognize the acronym CLEO? What does CLEO mean? Chief Law Enforcement Officer. The United States government, federal government, And this Supreme Court decision actually recognized the sheriffs who did this lawsuit as the Clio. They called us the Clios over and over. So if you want to get an official federal government documentation of who the Clio is, look no further than the Brady Bill. And you can take that home with you. Only costs $1. You should buy hundreds of these. This is the threat of arrest. Here it is. Under a separate provision of the Gun Control Act, that's the Federal Gun Control Act, any person who knowingly violates the section of the Gun Control Act amended by the Brady Bill shall be fined under this title, imprisoned for no more than 1 year, or both. There you go. Now, if you read the bottom part, it says the petitioners here object to being pressed into federal service and contend that congressional action compelling state officers to execute federal laws is unconstitutional. That was the big reason. But what? So what did we file under? The 10th Amendment. They can't tell me what to do. What? They can come in and arrest me, but they can't fire me and they can't hire me, but they can arrest me? How stupid. And then, of course, Ronald Reagan talked about how our federal tax system was a total injustice. Complete and utter injustice. And then we have a former colleague of Joe Banister, Jennifer Long, who testified to this before Congress. This is an IRS agent. Was she CRD? No? An IRS agent testified before the United States Congress. Quote, I can personally attest to the use of egregious tactics used by the IRS revenue agents, which are encouraged by members of the IRS management. Illegal, egregious actions encouraged by management to go after us. Why? Because they get these big, huge bonuses. Twice now, millions and millions have gone to IRS bonuses since they've been exposed as going after constitutional groups. Come on. How stupid can we get? And we allow this to continue in this country. That kind of money going to these people, these crooks. And then Jennifer Long goes on. These tactics, which appear nowhere in the IRS manual, are used to extract unfairly assessed taxes from taxpayers, literally ruining families' lives and businesses, all unnecessarily and sometimes illegally. Who's going to stop that? Who's going to protect you from this type of injustice? The United States Congress? They didn't do anything when yeah, thank you, that is a joke. They didn't do anything when she testified about this. You know that another IRS testified? An IRS agent testified about this too? Jennifer Long was willing to give her identification in doing so. The other guy wouldn't. And he testified behind camera. In other words, he was silhouetted and his voice muffled, or he wouldn't testify. But he testified, but he was so afraid of retaliation from the IRS, from the federal government. And that's why you get judges that go along with them. They're afraid of them too. And you know what? We're now having sheriffs that are willing to stand against them, and they're signing this document that we just developed, saying, you know what? There's a few things we're not going to go along with anymore, and the IRS abuses is one of them. And that's what wonderful. Now, in my decision, this is Scalia talking, and this is the United States Supreme Court talking, that the principles of federalism and the 10th Amendment are still there. And that no matter what's happened throughout history, and no matter what happened during the Civil War and all this other stuff, where people say we surrendered or lost our state sovereignty, baloney, we did not. Do you think the northern states lost their state sovereignty because they won the war? Why? Why would they give that up? What? They didn't. But regardless of what has happened, the states, retained in that beating heart red, inviolable sovereignty. The states retain an inviolable sovereignty. The only way, though, we really maintain that is to enforce that. So the legal question now is, who is supposed to enforce state sovereignty or the 10th Amendment? Is that really up to the federal government? No. That's our job. Every state and local official has the responsibility to do that. Keep your oath, defend state sovereignty, enforce the 10th Amendment. You know, right now, the federal government believes that they are the only entity on the face of the planet that can determine how far they go. Whose job is it really? It's ours. Yes. And wouldn't you love to do that? With a good Sheriff Jensen? You know? We stand with him as he stands for America and our Constitution. In other words, he just keeps his oath. It's a simple process. Might not always be an easy one, but the formula is a simple one. You keep your word. You keep your oath. Now, this is in this. And it's an amazing solution that Scalia tells us all. Now, follow this. You don't have to listen to me, you just follow this, but I'll still be talking anyway. Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. What? What? Congress doesn't have all governmental powers? The federal government doesn't have all governmental powers? Well, what kind of powers do they have? Well, read. They only have discrete enumerated ones. Where do we see that? Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Then, how do we keep these powers discrete and enumerated? In other words, how do we keep the federal government impotent? How? Then he says the answer to this. By the 10th Amendment's assertion. By the enforcement of the 10th Amendment. Now remember, we already answered the question, who's supposed to do that? Let's ask again. Is the federal government the one that's supposed to do that? No, they're the ones destroying it. Always have. So, it's every state and local official's responsibility, along with we the people, to enforce the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it are reserved to the states respectfully or to the people. Okay, then you think you'd like to be very familiar with this paragraph?
Yeah.
And would you like to show that to anybody else?
Yeah.
That there's a solution? And when I came here tonight, I was hoping that you'd leave this room tonight with some hope. And we actually have something that mainstream players, a Supreme Court decision that gives this formula and the solution for American freedom and independence. What we've been praying for all along. The great innovation of this whole design was that our citizens would have two political capacities, one state and one federal, each protected from incursion by the other. Wow. It's documented here. You have a state and local government to protect you from the incursions of other governments. And you want to, as Madison expressed it, the local or municipal authorities form distinct and independent portions of what? The supremacy. The federal government runs around and says, oh, we have the supremacy clause, so we're supreme, we can do whatever we want. Well, the Constitution was designed never to offer carte blanche to anyone, so you need to reread your Constitution. Because the Supremacy Clause says only when you follow the Constitution are you ever supreme. So what kind of supremacy do they have? None! They don't follow the Constitution! So this is all in this little decision. Take you about 15 minutes to read this, and you'll want to read it over and over. Now again, Scalia does a masterful job of summarizing all these points. This separation of the two spheres, what two spheres? State and federal, are one of the Constitution's structural protections of liberty. State sovereignty is a structural, constitutional structural protection of liberty. Who's going to make sure that stays there? Me. That's right. And I'm telling you what, it's going to be a lot easier if you're working with a sheriff who knows and understands this. Man, what a great solution. Just as the separation and independence of the coordinate branches of the federal government serve to prevent the accumulation of excessive power in any one branch, bam, solution time. A healthy balance of power between the states and the federal government will reduce the risk of tyranny and abuse from either front. My dear friends, do we have that healthy balance of power today? No. Then the solution is the states must restore. And it's counties and cities, as we just heard a while ago, as we saw in this same decision, that counties, that state, gosh, what did it say? Local or municipal, thank you, are part of all that. That's where Jefferson said government works best. It's at the local level. Of course that's where we defend freedom. And what's great about this? This is a peaceful process. You stand with sheriffs who know and understand the Constitution and the principles involved therein and the duty to protect God-given liberty. We're going to take America back, county by county and state by state. A double security arises to the rights of the people when this happens. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. Any question as to whether or not the federal government will control itself? Then what do we have to do? We must step in and interpose and erect the barriers. And what we have over here, I have a little DVD review of our conference last summer when Sheriff Clark from Milwaukee was the Sheriff of the Year. You want to hear a powerful speech? Listen to that John Wayne. We call him the Black John Wayne because he's a little more dark complected than I am. And he was fantastic. And that little DVD is worth it, the $10 that we're putting that on sale for. The different governments will control each other. We called that whole conference Erecting the Barriers, because that's actually the state's job. Erecting the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. That's a quote from James Madison from the Federalist Papers. And the power of the federal government would be augmented immeasurably if it were able to impress into its service, and at no cost to itself, the police officers of the 50 states. They can't do it. Do we go along? Oh yes, why? Because they offer these bribes and grants and toys to us. And I'm telling you, that's the most evil, illegal, unconstitutional act the federal government does, and we act like it's just commonplace. And I'm going to tell you at the end why we do that in this country. All these gradual encroachments, you know, and we accept them. Well, you give me money, I'll accept it. You bet. I'll compromise the freedom of my people. As sheriff, and I've actually heard that happen, and I keep telling sheriffs, if you're taking money and you're going to keep the money and compromise your oath and the liberty of your citizens, then I'm going to tell you right now, those grants, those bribes are doing what they were intended to do. Yeah. They've got you. The federal government, we held, may not compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. That's why this case is being used by South Carolina, as Joe mentioned, to stop Obamacare. It's in here. Yeah. And this is my favorite quote from this decision. Can you believe the United States Supreme Court saying, but the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions? Can you believe that? I mean, that sounds like a fairy tale quote. No Supreme Court would say that. You can't say that. But the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of government precisely so that we may resist the temptation to concentrate power in one location as an expedient solution to the crisis of the day. The crisis of the day. Have you heard that one? It's the Obama mantra and Rahm Emanuel. It's their mantra. They won't let them go to waste. But we can erect the barriers against them. We can and we must. This is the ruling, and it's real powerful, and I'll let you get one of these and read that. We're going to move on. And this is another quote from Judge Roll. Do not pretend in this courtroom your statistical analysis somehow equates to constitutionality. That's what they were trying to do. How would you like a few people to see that? Yeah. Now, this, I don't have the sound for this, but this is the story of Rosa Parks. And I've always talked about her, and I'm sure I did last time I was here. But this is the thing about Rosa. We should have never heard of Rosa Parks. We should have heard of the Oath Keeper cops that sat down next to her on the bus and made sure she got home safely. See, that's the difference between being a law enforcement officer, because the cop who is just inculcated and brainwashed and programmed to be this robot of enforcing stupid laws that are clearly contrary to the Constitution, or the peace officer and the CSPOA officer who believes that freedom and the Constitution come first. See, there's a huge difference there. So, that's why we apply the Rosa Parks today to the gun owner, as Sheriff Finch took care of that. We should have cops and sheriffs in California not worrying about issuing all these ridiculous permits from the sheriff, but saying, you know what? If you're a law-abiding citizen, please exercise the Second Amendment according to your own conscience. And don't come in and bother me with some paperwork about this anymore, because you're a law-abiding citizen of this state, and live the Second Amendment and go in peace. You know? But you know, that would be so amazing. I guess the second best thing is to have the sheriffs just issue them to everybody, but that's a double-edged sword. You know, it's the same thing with the permit in Florida. Everybody loved the permit in Florida, didn't they? But 2 men were arrested for it. And, oh, and by the way, Floyd Parrish was the one who was arrested by the deputy, and Sheriff Finch released him. The state re-arrested him as they arrested Sheriff Finch. Yeah. So he went to jail. He paid his, in fact, after they booked him in, re-booked him into jail, then they just brought him into court and said, well, we'll make a plea bargain with you as long as you pay the money we were expecting the first time. So they got their money, and he went on his way and got his probation, and that was it. But Sheriff Finch got in more trouble than the original guy did, a lot more. Now we have, what is this about? Badge versus the badge. This is an article from Range Magazine in 2003. You see, I didn't make this stuff up, and it just hasn't got enough play. And I'm going to make sure you know that this is real, because Sheriff Amon from Idaho fought the federal government to protect the land rights of people in his county. A sheriff from California, San Bernardino County, Sheriff Penrod. Look what he did, what action he took. The San Bernardino County Sheriff revoked the local law enforcement authority from the federal government across all 20,000 acres of his county and jurisdiction, and advised them to consult him first before taking any action on private property. This, yeah, why haven't we heard about this? What a, yeah, and then Sheriff Hoops takes his place and is a big wimp. So then another one in Nevada does the same thing. This isn't Tony DeMeo from Nye County. This is Sheriff Jones from Eureka. He's doing this stuff too. Sheriff Tony DeMeo stood against him and said, you're not going to take any more cattle from this rancher. And they said, well, we'll bring a SWAT team. And he goes, you better make it good, because I've got a good one too. And that's where that stalemate left, and they didn't come back. And now he's doing it, and he's had to protect his citizens from the same thing. Badge versus the badge. And this is the last quote. This is it, right here. And this is what I want you to remember. Because this is why, this is the answer I told you earlier. Why do we have these problems? Why can't we get this? Because we are part of this brainwashed situation. Because no matter how long we have lived under a pernicious power, no matter how oppressive, no matter how awful the IRS is. What do people in this country say? The brainwashed little wimps. When you tell them that maybe the IRS has done something wrong, oh, everybody has to pay their fair share. What would we do without the IRS? Well, I can think of a lot of things, and every one of them have to do with liberty. You know? We grow so accustomed to being the slave and the yoke around our necks that its removal seems frightening, even wrong. And we allow these spin masters to get us to fall under this. And we must have local leaders who know and understand that we must shift this paradigm. And we must take America back, county by county, and state by state. I absolutely implore you to join us in this holy cause. Become a member with us. We only do as much as what you allow us financially to do. Do you know that if we were funded, there would absolutely be no stopping this? There's sheriffs calling me from all over the country that want me to come there and do my seminars. There's some that just want help. There's some that need one-on-one contact. Sheriff Clark has actually called and asked me to help him with his campaign. He's in the middle of a big hot feud in his campaign because there's another Democrat running against him. He's a Democrat, standing for the Second Amendment. That's what he has done in his county. He told all his people in PSAs to be armed. That's why we became so close and good friends. And I didn't think he would want to be CSPOA Sheriff of the Year. He was thrilled. Couldn't have been more thrilled. We were actually taken into a protection room because the tornado was just a mile away, right when we were giving him his constitutional sheriff plaque. And we were in this big long hall, and all the people were kind of nervous. So I stood up on a chair, and I told everybody to come in. Let's finish. So everybody gathered around me on the chair, and I'm yelling and as loud as I could so everybody could hear. And I introduced Sheriff Clark to be the Sheriff of the Year for the CSPOA for last 2013, and he got up on the chair and finished and accepted. And so we did not let the tornado get in our way. We cannot let the tornadoes get in our way. Okay? We're going to keep going. We're going to keep going. And I'm asking you to go with us. We need you. CSPOA.org. I've got cards, I've got membership forms up here. I've got tools. And remember, any donation to us is making this happen. It's up to you. Now, the last time I was here, I closed a certain way, and I'm going to do it again. When I was first converted to the Constitution, I was a rookie cop back in 1983. And I went to a seminar. I made a mistake. I admit it. I went to a seminar called The Constitution for Law Enforcement Officers. And I was converted by a man who just passed away a few years ago, Dr. W. Cleon Scalzo. And the reason I knew of him is because he used to work in the FBI with my father. And so I went. And this man, in 2 days, in police training, no less, converted me to the Constitution. And while he was doing this class, he had all of us 240 cops stand up, and he taught us a little kindergarten exercise, and that's how I'm going to close today with this little exercise that he taught us. I'll be doing this and teaching this at my granddaughter's charter school in Pleasant Grove, Utah on Friday for the whole school and the parents. And I'm going to be doing this with them just as I'm going to do it with you, except at that time I'll have my little granddaughter, Libby, and my grandson, Jackson, doing it with me. The reason Libby is named Libby is because she was born on the 4th of July and her name is Liberty. So, and Jackson was, I'm giving him a new name. I'm giving him a nickname because he was born on leap year, so I'm going to call him Skip. But I've never forgot this. And when Dr. Skousen, after the whole thing was over, he handed me his book, The Making of America, a big 700-page book, and he gave it to me. He gave it to all of us. But when he gave it to me, he said, promise me, look at me right in the eye, he said, promise me that you'll teach these things to your children. I've kept that promise, and I now teach them all across the country. And I share this with you, and I want you to remember that when I learned this, I learned it at police training. And it goes like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And that's the eagle. Long may she be free. I finished at 9 o'clock and she says she wants to do Q&A now. Normally, I don't like Q&A. So if anybody starts detracting from the spirit of this meeting, I'm going to tell you can't answer that question. But I do love talking with people. I love people, and this is your meeting, so I don't make the rules.
Thank you so much to our wonderful guests tonight. A couple little Santa Cruz goodies we're sending with them on their way this evening. Don't leave. We've got two things happening. We've got the raffle, which includes a nice little chunk of silver, I believe, tonight. And we've also got Q&A here with Sheriff Mack himself. So stick around for a little bit here.
Okay, and you definitely could come up to the table, and if you need a membership form or whatever else you need, please come up to the table and get it. If somebody wants to start putting up some of those chairs so they have room, that'd be great. But make sure that this is a question, okay? I don't want to hear about the traffic ticket you got yesterday, okay? Question.
However, that isn't starting quite yet, so let's hold on.
Hey, I took off the microphone. I took off a little one. Okay.
Okay, so here we go. We're going to try to keep the questions, one question per person. One question per person, and let's try to keep the questions super short, and especially any follow-up questions.
The answers will be real short. I'll tell you the answers right now. Have your sheriff do it. If you won't do it, get rid of him.
I've just got one question. It's in 4 parts and 7 categories. Okay, so you talk. I've heard you speak of how a sheriff can resist a unlawful order. This is very important for all of you to hear, actually, because everyone here has an interest in this question, because you're all people. How does a citizen resist an unlawful order when confronted? And how do they do it peacefully and effectively without bringing the wrath upon them?
I really don't know how to do that without somebody else being on your side and helping you.
Okay.
If you're doing it on your own, the powers that be will crush you. And so I've always maintained that they're coming for your guns and you start shooting.
Right.
No. Discretion is the better part of valor at that point. I don't support that. It's a personal choice at that time what you will do. I've always said, have some throwaway guns that you give them and make sure your good stuff is hidden really well.
That's a good point. I just have one more question.
But again, your sheriff should all be putting them on notice. And I don't know how many in California that will actually do this, but we have some in Northern California that are ready to do it. You've got some great sheriffs here in California. just not too many in Southern California, okay? If any at all in Southern California. But who would ever thought that the Ninth Circuit would agree on the Heller case on what they just did recently? I never thought the Ninth Circuit would do that. So again, miracles are happening, and so there's other things going on. Hopefully we can get some sheriffs. You have a great guy in San Bernardino running for sheriff there in the name of Paul Schrader. And he's been at our conferences and he's endorsed by me. And so there's some things happening. You've got Kevin Jensen running here, or at least close by. So there are some things happening and there is some hope. That's what we're offering and that's what we're saying. This is not a call to arms. This is a call to stand. Okay? Dang good question though.
One more. The court of public opinion is obviously the most powerful force of any democracy. I've got a scenario. If a public protest is organized that seeks to address the unconstitutionality of some legislative act or statute, and the organizers think it's a politically and socially savvy move to publicly invite our elected servants to show solidarity and support for such a movement, what type of an effect do you think that would have on the social climate? Would it put you as an elected official in a situation where you might feel embarrassed to not show up?
Yeah. Well, I think any public official has the duty to show up, but he also has the duty to teach correct principles when he does. And just like a sheriff showing up at the Rosa Parks arrest, the sheriff that teaches the rest of the public, this is what we do with stupid laws. I'm not going to enforce it. I will stand by her. The right of the individual wins out over the mob. And there's so many teaching opportunities for you with your sheriff and your sheriff back to the community. And this is a wonderful day and age. The doors of opportunity are opening to us all. That's what the good Lord had to hit me over the head with a 2x4 lots of times about this, but most recently January 24th at our conference. I was about ready to get out of a lot of this. I would have never left the freedom movement, but this one thing, the CSPOA, I was getting pretty frustrated with. And now I'm so much more invigorated, and meeting with you tonight has even added to that, to my vigor and my rededication to this, because I see it every day working. And these other sheriffs that are making it happen, and Sheriff Finch and his two little daughters and his wife, and their total and complete dedication to the holy cause of liberty has inspired me. Should inspire us all. Okay? So, thank you, really good.
Okay, so to have this continue to work, what I'm going to ask each person to do is come up, ask your question. When you've finished with your question and you're ready for Sheriff Mack to begin answering it, please step away from the microphone and take a seat. That will indicate that he's ready to answer.
I'll make them shorter, and I know it's getting late. So.
Sheriff Mack, my question. Does the Sheriff's Department have the right to step in and stop the enforcement of a jurisdictional law and the subsequent judgment in such a case that a judge might agree with the planning department against the landowner, or the same thing would apply for eminent domain? Can the sheriff step in?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one case where the sheriff should have gotten involved was right here in California, San Juan Capistrano, when the Fram family was exercising Bible study at their home, and the planning and zoning came in and fined them. The sheriff should have stopped every bit of that. It would have been a great lesson. But that sheriff, of course, I can't remember, Hudgens in Orange County. Anybody know? I think her name's Hudgens, and she's just a showboat. I mean, she does nothing, doesn't care about the oath of office, has absolutely no clue what her job is or her assignment, and doesn't care. And she didn't do anything about it. And many of us were asking her to. And so, you know, she even talked when she first was in office about the importance of her oath of office. And it's just a joke. But she had such a wonderful opportunity, didn't take it. And yes, the rights to life, liberty, and property are so key to our government, to our Constitution. And what is all government for? To secure these rights. And if they're not going to do that, then you don't need them and you don't want them.
What can be done to keep the banks from taking your house?
Okay, the foreclosure problems. If you have any evidence whatsoever, and we've had sheriffs talk about this, if you have any evidence whatsoever that the banks have committed fraud during foreclosures or any other time, get the evidence to your sheriff and have him investigate. I'm not saying that he's going to side with you each time or whatever. Have them investigate. If you're groped sexually by the TSA, file a complaint, get the evidence over to your sheriff, and have them investigate. I didn't say arrest. That's not what the sheriff's supposed to do. He's supposed to investigate and then work on the prosecution after that with proper authority at that time. Okay? They're here to investigate. Okay?
An attorney today mentioned that the CPS is in blatant violation of children's 4th and 14th Amendment rights. How do we get our sheriff to stand up for our children against CPS?
Again, and I told you there was going to be a lot of repetitive answers. The answer is get them the evidence and have them investigate. I know lots of other sheriffs that are sick and tired of CPS. I conducted investigations against them and for them. You know, you take the cases as they come, but the sheriff cannot pick and choose which ones he investigates. Oh, this is legit, this one's not. No, he has to investigate. That's the thing that he has to do. Will they always do it? No. But they, on something that way, absolutely, that's vital that they investigate that. Okay?
Yeah, you mentioned the TSA, so let's go for it.
The TSA?
Is there a statute of limitations? Because a couple of years ago, I was groped, and then I tried to file with get the police department to investigate, but they wouldn't. And so, can I go to the sheriff now?
We actually, yes, you can. I don't know what. Most felonies go over 2 years, but I don't know what that one would be, or if it's aggravated assault, or if it's a minor felony. So you're probably close to the statute of limitation time, but you can still do it. And you know, is the evidence destroyed at this point? Do they still have it on video?
They destroyed it.
Yeah, so you should have requested that as soon as you finished and got a lawyer that requested that and subpoenaed the records and got the TSA videotape. Yeah. Because those don't last, they don't keep those forever.
No, they destroyed it right away.
Oh, good for them. Yeah, smart.
Yeah, I subpoenaed it, yeah.
And that should be another charge that the sheriff should pursue, is destruction of evidence. Yeah. We actually have a sheriff in Florida, in Jacksonville, Duval County, that has sent deputies over to stop the TSA from stopping vehicles before they come in, when they come into the airport. So they're starting their groping by doing roadblocks. And this sheriff sends a deputy over to make sure that they're not violating people's rights. Watching over the TSA in that regard. Isn't that ridiculous? But they do.
All right, is there anyone else who has a question, perhaps doesn't want to be on camera or doesn't want to speak in front of the group to ask their question? We can get that.
I have a question. Is Sheriff Jensen ready to turn in his... I'll come out. Yeah? All right.
No, you're just mentioning about...
All right.
If there is anyone who would like to have a question for Sheriff Mack but doesn't want to be in front of the camera, let someone know and come up here and tell me, and we'll make sure that happens.
No, it's the federal officers like FBI, TSA, and everything that should be blocked by the sheriffs in some cases when they're requested to, right? I mean, is there any statutes or anything that allows the federal government to do this? Because there isn't, right? I mean, are they just simply doing it illegally? Or do they come up with, I mean, from your experience, I mean, how are they just getting away with it? Is it just because people don't complain?
Are there federal statutes that allows them to do what they're doing?
Because they can pass laws. It doesn't mean they're constitutional.
Right, they're statutes, as you said.
you know, like the guys, you know, raiding the Amish farms and stuff like that. They believe they have the right to do it.
Because their regulations and their policies allow it. And then, most of that has been endorsed by federal courts. Most of their regulations have been endorsed by federal courts. However, we don't have to go along with that.
It doesn't make it constitutional.
My Supreme Court case says states are not subject to federal direction. Okay? That's in the little booklet. Okay? It is in here. States are not subject to federal direction. Okay?
Hi there. We're so glad you're here. Thank you so much. You've given such encouragement to so many. I was just wanting to ask if you're familiar with the this is on the NSA, the USA Freedom Act. There's like been a lot of petitions and
I've heard of so many similar that I'm not sure that that's the same one.
yeah, they've had demonstrations in Monterey.
That'd really be neat to have the USA Freedom Act, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's called the Constitution.
Right, I hear what you're saying. And of course there's another one with Dianne Feinstein right now, but that is not the one that we want to be doing. And the other question is, are you familiar with John Quaid? He was on Clint Eastwood's Every Which Way But Loose movie. He was the crazy guy on the motorcycle, and they had the monkey. And he was, okay, in real life he's very, very smart, and he's been in Texas and Arizona and all different places, but he started the Juror Society, the Christian Juror Society.
Oh, yes, I'm
are you familiar with that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, and then are you familiar with Randy Lee and his little bout with the IRS too?
Who, Lee?
Randy Lee.
Randy Lee.
Randy Lee.
No.
So,
but there's millions of victims of the IRS.
But what he did was he stood up, and they have a whole transcript of his court thing, Randy Lee's, and he said that he was a man of the land, and he stated how he was there as let's see, a living soul, and he spelled his name with capital.
Yeah, I will tell you, most of those defenses don't work.
Well, guess what?
But sometimes they do, but it's very rare.
Yeah, and then what happened was, when the IRS guy said, he seems to think if he just spells his name with lowercase and capital letters.
They don't
But
care.
what happened was, the judge said, okay, case dismissed for mistaken identity, and he did win. So it's
Very rare that will happen. Okay?
but what you're saying is right, because it's been set up in
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, Kevin, make sure you call.
Remember to keep these questions very, very brief, please.
Yeah, hi. I'm just wondering if you had any ideas of how I could stop the county planning department from selling my property in a tax sale, my primary residence that I worked on for years. And
If you had a sheriff that would investigate that and stop that, I'll move here. Because I just don't think that your sheriff here is ready to do that. I hope he does. I pray for you that he would.
Right.
I would love to see you win that. Oh man, I would love to see you win that.
You don't know it?
If you have not talked to your sheriff yet, you need to. And tell him I told you to.
All right, I'll see what
I don't
happens.
care who it is.
I'll find out what happens with that.
Okay, God bless you.
Line up closer, folks. Line up closer. Keep the time shorter here.
How many sheriffs in California work in this organization?
We've had about 15 sheriffs in California either attend our conferences or be very involved with us. About 15.
Are they on your website?
No, they're not all. No, we're not exposing all that at this point. We have several on our board. Dean Wilson from Del Norte County, John D'Agostini, can't remember what county he's from. What?
Siskiyou.
Siskiyou's John Logan. Which one? El Dorado's D'Agostini. And we got several others. Yeah.
Glenn County, Colusa County Sheriff?
What's his name?
Jones?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. It's hard to remember all the sheriffs across the country, but the ones in California that I've been working with, yeah, pretty good. Dean Wilson, John D'Agostini, two of the best, and John Logan. Yeah.
Hi, my name is John Monahan. I'm an ex-Marine, Vietnam era Marine. I didn't have to kill anybody, thank God. I joined when Kennedy was president. I didn't think he was getting me killed, but it got him killed. He was bringing him home $1,000 a month at the time. But the main point I'm trying to make is when I was sworn oath to the Constitution when I enlisted, the words were just that. I swear an oath to the Constitution, not to a general or to a president.
Right.
And now I understand the oath has been changed to insist that the military individual must obey the president, and that's unconstitutional.
That is correct. And that is a very dangerous trend.
The National Defense Actualization Act.
Right. I would never take that oath.
Yeah, and so they're enlisting men that eventually they plan on having them arrest and shoot civilians.
Swear an oath.
They did in Germany.
That makes you swear an oath to a traitor and somebody who's causing harm.
When you have a government that is run by the corporations and the military, you have fascism.
Right.
And wake up, folks, because that's what's going on.
Thank you for your service.
They wear a little American flag instead of a, you know what.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. We got a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do.
Thank you so much, everyone. Let's give a warm thank you to Sheriff Richard Mack. He's come a long way to be here tonight. Please, if you can, visit his table at the front of the